Bahamas, we love conch, but what if there were no conch left? And guess what? That could happen. And that's what we're talking about on the Reid Factor. Well, the Bahamas National Trust is the key player in the conservation effort. And with me today are two BNT specialists, the Marine Science Officer, Anessa Lundy, and the Education Officer, Stephen Evans. Welcome to the Reid Factor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Tell us, first of all, what is conservation?
Well, conservation really is an educational campaign aimed at developing a sustainable conch fishery in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm. And how long has it been in practice?
Well, conservation's been happening in the Bahamas for about 4 years now, and we've really taken huge steps to speak to fishermen, the general public, consumers, restaurants. We really want to get the message out there that we need to protect the clean conch.
Now, how much of a threat is there to future stocks of conch in the Bahamas? I ask this for a couple of reasons, because I have some family members who were here very recently, and they went to Exuma, and their biggest chagrin was that they couldn't find any conch on the menu. And this was just in January.
It's actually very staggering if you really sit down and think about it. So what we found through research is queen conch reproduction is density dependent. There should be about 56 adult conchs in 1 hectare, which is about 2 football fields in length. And there needs to be about 56 for them to be able to find each other to mate, and then the females need to then spawn. So if we approach that threshold too closely, our fishery will crash, which means there'll be no more conch.
So it's a real threat then?
It's Definitely. A real threat, yes.
And even in New Providence, are we seeing fewer numbers coming to places like where you go to like Arawak Key, or if you go to like my boy Skinny's under Potter's Key Dock? Are you finding that they're even being challenged at getting the numbers of conchs coming in?
Yes, I don't know if you experienced over the holidays. There's a very real example of people not being able to find conch or purchase conch. If you go to certain restaurants, I won't say the name right now, but if you go to certain restaurants right now, they'll tell you, okay, you have to get a combo, or we don't have that right now, you have to come back.
Actually, that's true. I went to that restaurant you're talking about, and I was very upset after
that
waiting
restaurant
for a long time on the line, and there was no conch.
Right. So some people will say it's because there was bad weather and the fishermen couldn't go out. Yes, that's true in a certain sense, but that means that the fishing grounds that are close to you, that you have access to when the weather is good or bad, it's not viable. That means you have to go further and further out to get the conch.
Yeah, even as we consider this, something that I think is really important to establish right off the bat is the fact that we're not pointing fingers and saying, hey, you're responsible for this, but we're realizing that the trend is causing the problem to become worse over time. And it's a situation that needs to be tackled at every single level in the community.
So what is the fishing trend?
The fishing trend is to collect juveniles or immature conch, which is really bad because we're taking hundreds of thousands of conch out of the population right away when you take a baby conch, because they've not had chance to reproduce yet. And it's just a lack of education. So a lot of people just don't know the difference between an adult conch and a baby conch.
Okay, what kind of sizes are we talking about? And of course we're gonna have a little show and tell a little later on, but what kind of sizes are we talking about that you shouldn't even be looking at? Okay. And how can you tell the size from if you don't actually take it out of the shell?
Well, you can actually use the shell as an indicator of maturity for the conch. So the first thing to look at is, does it have a lip or not? And the lip on the queen conch is pretty characteristic. It's flared, it's pretty looking. It's fabulous. I can show you a shell later on in the show to demonstrate that. So that's the first way. The second way is the thickness of the lip. If a lip is very thin, it doesn't necessarily mean the conch has reproduced yet. But if you have a thick lip, about 15 millimeters, then the conch would have had a chance to reproduce or replenish the stock.
Yep. Another thing that's important to understand too is in a lot of areas, the size of the actual shell is dependent on environmental factors. So you can have shells that are small, but you will see that they have a thick and flared lip. And then you could have bigger shells that if you pick them up by the lip, it breaks off in your hand. It's really important to understand that it's all about the size of that lip.
Now we're talking about queen conch, right?
Queen conch, the
Yes.
conch we eat.
Exclusively queen conch. What other kinds of conch are there that they're not edible?
Well, some of them are, some aren't. And it
Well,
also,
what other kinds of conch do we find in the Bahamas?
you have the king conch,
Yep, you have helmet conchs as well.
there's the milk conch. What else is there? There's
But-
a few more, but that's on top of my
but
head.
we don't. So people who are fishing for conch, if they see them, they're just not gonna bother with them.
And it's funny, it's not even at the forefront of our minds. And they are everywhere. You see them on the beach every day. However, the one that we're looking out for is this one that not only feeds us and is so important culturally, but brings in so much money to the country every year.
Absolutely. Now, what's the reproduction period for conch? How long does it take for a new conch to be to appear, to be born, if you will?
Okay, so the conch lays an egg strand. It's not really an individual egg, like a chicken egg. It's egg strand that's made up of 300 to 400,000.
So it's like a sort of gelatinous kind of string, if you will?
It's like an egg mass. So it's wound up about this big, and it's covered with sand usually because it has mucus as a way to camouflage or keep it camouflaged from predators. But it takes about 6 years from egg to maturity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. And the chances of those hundreds of thousands of eggs, the survival rate is very low. So we need to make sure that we give that focus as well. The numbers sound staggering, but typically with any organism, when it lays a large number of eggs, that's their way of adapting to an environment in which most of the eggs actually won't survive.
But at 6 years.
Yep.
So this
Yeah.
means that really this could even be in more jeopardy than grouper in a way.
Could be, yes.
Grouper take pretty long to get to their age of
That's
maturity
too,
as well.
I could be getting them wrong, confused now. But okay, so obviously, the fishermen would be your first group to target, right?
Yes.
And what kind of efforts are being done right now to ensure that they understand? And we also know that some might understand, but because of the economic viability of it,
Yeah.
they say, right,
Yeah.
go ahead and do it anyway. So how are we? And of course, you need other people to help you police them as well.
So we've had direct fisher engagement. We started focus groups in the northern Bahamas. We targeted the fishermen. We sat them down in small groups and we asked very hard questions. Do you think there's a problem with the conch fishery? What do you think is a problem with the conch fishery? How can we help you save the fishery? And their answers were just amazing. And we plan to continue that effort later on in the year.
Tell me some of the answers.
The answers were, yeah, I've been fishing for 40 years and I used to go to this fishing ground, but now I have to go to this other fishing ground because this one's not viable
I know, like in
anymore.
West End, I mean, which is where I have family from, they used to, just walk right there. You don't even have ankle high water,
Yeah,
and you got
it's-
conch
Yeah.
for days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not finding that now.
Exactly. And some of the younger guys, they don't really have, some of the younger fishermen we spoke to, they don't really have that much experience on the water, but they know how hard it is to find conch.
Where is conch generally found?
Well, they have a tricky life cycle. So during the first year of their life, they bury themselves in the sand, so sandbanks. They feed in seagrass beds, and they spawn on clean coral sand, or like coral rubble. So they've
They
a
go
lot
everywhere.
of different habitats.
Yeah.
In some areas, they're found in mangroves.
So what do you think else needs to be done? We need to start putting in some serious penalty. Well, they're penalties now, right?
They are.
Right.
What are those penalties again?
Well, so the current legislation is you can harvest a mature conch with a well-formed, fully flared lip. And the it's up to the Department of Marine Resources and the fisheries officers. If they find you, they can press charges. And the Fisheries Act right now is undergoing some changes, and the penalties will be stiffer.
Will be stiffer.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is to get us to not only understand through education, but to take responsibility for what is ours. You know, as an informal educator, what I've found is that people receive the message, any message, much more effectively when they think, this is mine. I have to protect this. This is what I stand for and who I am. So when we get the message across that your kids won't have any conch, or your grandkids, for some people, your great-grandkids, whenever it is, that this, if we don't change our actions, that will eventually happen to our populations of conch. When they think of it as, well, that kind of hits home because it's something that I grew up around, it's something that I'm so used to, and to say that my conch won't be around anymore is a big deal.
Doing some work looking on your website, the Bahamas National Trust website, and it said that, I'll read it, surveys of conch grounds at numerous locations in the Bahamas indicate a decline of the number of queen conchs, which is what we're saying. When the number of conchs in an area decreases, they are less likely to find mates, which you've also said.
Right.
And it highlights one such area near Lee Stocking Island in the Exumas has seen a 91% decrease in the number of conchs per hectare between 1991 and 2011.
Yes.
91% decrease?
Yes.
So they got no conchs there at all, really, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Wow.
It's scary.
We're going to talk a little bit more about conch and really how difficult it is to find it, and if we don't take some serious efforts, there won't be any. Right here on the Reid Factor. Stay with us. Believe it or not, there could come a day when we have no conch to eat in the Bahamas. How would you feel about that? I would be really, really upset. But anyway, we're talking about conservation, and of course, before the break, you met Anessa Lundy, who is the Marine Science Officer at BNT, and we had Stefan Evans on, an education officer who will come back a little bit later. But now we're also happy to have Catherine Booker on, who is with the Exuma Foundation, and she's going to tell us a lot more about the science of conch. And you've been doing some really amazing studies with conch in the Exuma areas, in the Exumas rather, I should say, where there is a problem with the numbers of conch, right?
Yeah, so I work with the Exuma Foundation right now, and prior to that, I started with an organization called Community Conch, working alongside the Department of Marine Resources, doing surveys actually throughout the Bahamas to look at the fishing grounds and conch populations on those fishing grounds. So the most interesting result we had was in the Exuma Keys. We were able to go back to that area and survey some locations that had been surveyed like 20 years prior. And that gave us some really eye-opening information about just the extent of the decline that had taken place in that particular area, but also what was happening inside a protected area as well. We did some surveys in the Exuma Key Land and Sea Park.
The biggest land and sea park is there.
Yeah,
and in there you're having issues as well.
Well, the populations were a lot stronger, certainly, in that area. But we did see some evidence that because the park is not it's not operating alone in the ocean, that the declines that are seen around the region were actually affecting what was happening in the park populations as well.
Wow, amazing. So let's talk a little bit more about, we were talking about lip thickness, etc., all of that, right? And you want to go a little bit more in depth in that, Anessa?
Yes, well, Community Conch actually did a lot of the background research that helped us understand that lip thickness really was the better indicator than a flared lip to sexual maturity. So I'll let Catherine talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's kind of something that not a lot of people are aware of, that a conch actually grows its shell from the time that it's a larva. It settles down and it starts to grow its shell. And as it gets bigger, it'll grow in length, and then it flares its lip, and then from then on it continues to increase the thickness of that lip. So we were able to do some studies that showed the relationship between the thickness of that lip and the sexual maturity of the conch. And these studies have been done elsewhere, so we kind of confirmed what other science was showing. But it's an important thing, I think, to know when you're trying to manage a conch fishery, is if you're really protecting the reproductive stock.
Yeah.
Obviously, overfishing is the issue, but how are we able to measure the impact of foreigners coming into Dominicans, people from Florida where there's no more conch, really, right?
Right.
How they've impacted the levels here?
I don't think there's a very clear way to measure the poachers versus the non-poaching in terms of overfishing.
Because if you talk to baby fishermen, I'm sure they're saying anything else is
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a point the finger elsewhere, but we're not really trying to point the finger anywhere. We need to come together as a country and decide, okay, conch is important to us. Conch is important to our ecosystem, really, because there are sharks that feed on conch, there are rays. The hermit crabs need the conch shell on some level, right? So
by conch stocks diminishing, you're impacting the entire ecosystem, is
exactly,
what you're saying.
Absolutely.
yes.
Wow.
So we really need to come together and think about what is the best way to protect the fishery. I'm not saying that illegal fishing and poaching is not impacting the fishery. I'm saying there's a whole lot that we can do personally as a country to protect the fishery.
What can we do?
We can make sure we know the difference between an adult conch and a juvenile conch. Make sure we choose to fish for and purchase adult conch only. You can call us, you can follow us on Facebook, you can send us an email if you're not sure how to identify, and we can show you. You can follow the My Science My Conch program, which Catherine is also going to talk about a little bit more of later. So it's really up to you as a consumer, you as a fisherman, you as a purchaser to understand the difference.
What about conch farming? What are we doing in the Bahamas along those lines, and how viable is it, and how much will it really support the overall effort of conch sustainability?
Yeah, it's definitely possible to raise conch, culture conch, and there have been conch farms actually in the Turks and Caicos, and also I think that there are attempts in the Bahamas to have a conch farm. From a scientist perspective and actually from an economist perspective, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It takes a lot to raise a conch from a tiny little thing that lives in the sand to something that's worth eating, purchasing, and that. So from an economic feasibility standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it has been attempted, and I think, in my mind, the easier approach would be to set up natural conch farms. Just let conch be in an area where the habitat is good. You don't have to worry about managing them, feeding them. Just make sure that the reproductive number or the numbers are high enough and dense enough for reproduction to take place, and there you go.
What kind of feedback are you getting from people in Exuma?
I've been there for a few years now, and I think it's kind of across the board, but people know that something's happening, and it's just a matter of, either what it's due to, or what to do about it. I think people definitely recognize that there's a difference, and especially between now and 20 or 30 years ago, there's no question that the conch populations have declined.
Similar reaction throughout the rest of the country?
Definitely a similar reaction nationally. One of our conservation partners, the Nature Conservancy, the Bahamas branch, they've actually partnered with us to conduct a national social survey. It's called a Knowledge, Attitudes, and Practices Survey. And it really asked hard questions, similar to the questions we asked the fishermen. We asked people from every island in the Bahamas, do you think there's a problem with the conch fishery? What do you think the problem is? How can we address that problem? And almost 100% of people said, yes, there's a problem. What we can do to protect the fishery is protect the babies. Let's protect the juveniles.
Great. So like crawfish, like grouper, we need to have a conch season.
That could be one option. Very definite.
Yeah?
Very definite. Yeah.
When would be the best time for that season to be proposed, if you will?
You wanna?
Well, the
I mean,
conch.
do they have a specific
They
time?
do,
when
yeah.
Yeah.
It overlaps basically with the crawfish lobster season.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
and that's been one of the I guess sticking points with that option is
If I
because
can't eat crawfish, I eat conch.
that was
Right.
an alternative,
Yeah.
for making a living and also just having something on the table to eat. So,
Well, I guess if we can't have crawfish and conch for a certain period of time, which, hey, I'm willing to actually sacrifice, we got to do what? Look for wilks and curbs, huh?
Yeah, but we want to encourage fishermen to, send us an email and at bnt@bnt.bs. Find us on Facebook, give us a call, and you can let us know what other things you can do in that time period, and we can perhaps work together on training people to do those things. Because it is about livelihoods. We know people rely on conch to eat. We know they rely on conch to live, to finance their lives. So we're not trying to take that away from people. We really want to protect the conch for the future.
What alternatives are there? I mentioned wilks and curbs halfway jokingly, but we hear about things like that may not be consumed greatly by Bahamians, but you hear about Asians being interested in sea cucumbers and stuff like that. Is there anything that we could else that's out there? Like, for example, we don't have abalone around here, do we?
No.
Which is very much like conch to me.
It is. We can. I would encourage you to eat lionfish. It's an invasive species. It's really wreaking havoc on our ecosystem.
It tastes good too.
It tastes really good. Yeah, I've tried it. I would say it's very similar to grouper. I've had other people tell me something else, but I would really recommend the lionfish.
But nothing really close to a conch substitute, though. That
No.
we have.
Not off the top of my head, I would not recommend sea cucumbers.
It tastes bad?
Not that they taste bad, but it's bad for the environment. They provide a lot of the sand, and the Bahamas and our white sand. That's in every tourism ad.
Right, yeah, so that could cause damage.
Yeah.
So what other steps need to be taken and other steps that you are doing right now?
Well, we are hoping to implement the My Science, My Conch program in New Providence. That's where a lot of the demand
That's
is.
going to be in the high schools and primary schools, or is it going to be even at higher levels?
It's going to be through our Discovery Club, which Stefan is going to talk about a little bit later. So Community Conch and our Discovery Club are going to partner to bring it to the kids. And the age group is primary school.
Good. Well, we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about making sure that we've got conch for generations to come. Well, Catherine and Stefan are showing me how to measure conch, and we've got a lot of different size conch shells here. How old would the conch of this one have been, Catherine?
Well, this little guy right here, or girl, this would have been about a year old, just having emerged from the sand.
Wow.
Yeah, so they spend their first year of life under the sand. These two right here would be probably around 2 years old. And then once you get the flared lip of the conch shell, this is what we're talking about when we say the flared lip. These conch can be anywhere from 3.5 to 20 years old. And the key, determining what the age is and actually the sexual maturity as well, is to measure the thickness of that lip. So all of these shells right here have a different thickness to this lip right here. So when we're doing our studies in the field, we bring a set of calipers with us, and we have a certain place on the lip that we like to to take that measurement. Okay, so as we said before, for the conch to be mature, for you to have a fair bit of certainty that it's had a chance to reproduce, the conch shell lip thickness would be 15 millimeters. So I thought it might be fun to show you how we do that and just see if you can do it.
Yeah, that'll be a good.
So there's a lot of kids that have done this. So,
Now you're really gonna make me.
yeah, no worries. So you take the shell just like this.
So,
You can
special way to hold it.
Yep, it's probably easiest to do that, and then
Okay.
just hold this in your hand, and then you're gonna find the spine of the shell right here and go right behind that.
All right, so right like that, or
Yeah, and open it up, the jaws, and then
and then close
push
it.
it all the way down. There you go. So then you're taking the reading right where that 0 falls. So
Okay, now this is obviously less than 15, right?
yep, so that's about 5 millimeters.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah,
All right, now is that it should be at the top of it,
right.
Like that?
Like right about there. Yep.
Yeah. I
So
don't
where
know
does
if
that
we can
0?
See, but that's yeah, less than 10. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
Good. Okay, so
Okay, so you
obviously-
got the technique down now.
Obviously, this one, even though this looks, because if I were to look at this
It's a huge
myself,
shell.
I would say, man, it's a big shell. I could go and,
Delicious.
but the animal is not mature at the level that I should be.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know there's the part in the regulation that says it needs to be a well-formed flared lip, and if you were to pick this shell up and actually, look at it and feel it, you'd say it's pretty well-formed flared lip. But that's kind of the new understanding, the new definition of mature. We have to look at the actual thickness of the lip. So why don't you take a second and see if you can practice. I want to explain to you.
A fully, this would have been a 15 millimeter one?
I don't know. Why don't you see?
Okay. Well, hey, I did it once, doesn't mean I can do it again.
Sure you
And
can.
then you got a bigger instrument there,
Yeah,
too.
so this is interesting because this is another set of calipers, but we use these to measure the
Oh,
length.
from the length, okay.
Yeah, and as Stefan had mentioned earlier, there's definitely a lot of different sizes of conch out there, and it depends on what they're eating, and probably it's a little genetic too.
So the lip has to be 15 millimeters or more. The length should be.
it
matter?
doesn't really matter.
Once you've got that 15 millimeters.
Yeah.
But for scientific purposes, you want to know how long, how big it grows.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So let's take a look at this big boy.
Go right ahead.
Wow. Okay. And I still use this small because that's for length. Now let's see if I can show people.
Yep.
Oh,
Let me bring it
wow.
up here just a little bit.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And then open those jaws all the way up and push it down.
All right, down all the way.
Yep. And there you go.
And I don't know if we can. Well, this still isn't 15 millimeters, right? That's 10.
That's about 17. Yeah.
Okay, so that's just okay. I can't
Yeah.
even count.
No, you're
All right,
looking
so-
at where the 0
Yeah.
falls
Okay.
there.
Good. So that's about 17 millimeters.
Yep.
Okay, so this one would be acceptable for
Ready
us
to go.
if we wanted to actually have conch for a meal, for some scorched conch, some conch salad, or
Yeah, this conch would have laid, many egg sacs by that point. There's
turn. They want to turn around. Okay. All right. Let's see. Good. Oh boy. So let's get up here.
it's a little awkward until you do
No,
it.
no,
Like
I'm a little
1,000 times.
awkward. Okay, I don't know if we can see anything on that. Something else I thought, right? Because we thought that these were structures that just grew, but that's not the case from what you were telling me. The conch, the animal itself, actually constructs this.
Yeah.
Wow!
It does.
Yep.
Wow!
Not a lot of people
And-
realize
and,
that.
And what is the actual material made of?
Calcium carbonate.
Calcium carbonate. And they actually, wow. So how do they? I'm trying to figure out how they do that. How do they do that?
Well, I think we need to go back to biology class for that. No, they have a membrane. They have the ability to secrete calcium carbonate from within their body. So that's the very simple answer. But yeah, it takes a lot of energy to build a shell like that. So it's an animal that probably we just don't appreciate enough.
Well, you just saw me learning how to measure a conch, and as awkward as I am, if I can do it, you can do it too. But it's all well and good to say that we're measuring this, but how practical is this really, Catherine?
Well, It's all about what people are willing to learn how to do and actually do when they're out there. You know, if you're a fisherman and you're fishing for conch, are you really going to grab a set of calipers and measure the shell? Maybe not. But as an educational tool, we found it to be just really eye-opening for people and just helping them to understand what the issue is. So that's why we developed the My Conch Citizen Science program and got into the high schools and on several different islands now, and we're going to continue that program with B&T and try to get people being the scientists for the day.
And to buy it, are the younger people buying into it?
Well, I can speak on that. They definitely are. So our Discovery Club program is basically an environmental youth club. And we have about 60 clubs across 9 different islands in the Bahamas, from Grand Bahama straight down to Anagua. And they are already deeply involved in many of the environmental issues that are faced, both on land and in the ocean in the Bahamas. We have 7 to 9-year-olds that are explorers, 10 to 12 that are guardians, and 13 and up that are navigators. And basically what we want to do is integrate the My Science, My Conch program into Discovery Club. We have a shell program, and they're going to learn how to do the same things that you did when you measured the conch. And they're not only going to become smarter or more intelligent, but they're going to have something practical that they can say, this is where I can apply what I've learned to my own country.
That's great. And of course, the worst learners are the adults, huh?
Maybe.
But I mean, so many times, as a conch eater, you go places and people say, this little small conch, you expect me to eat this? If you want to change that, then really what you should do is, and as you said previously, that the season, if we were to have a conch season, it would sort of mirror that of the crawfish season. So if I wanted to make a real stand right now for conch, I just wouldn't eat conch during the same season as crawfish season. How's that to get started?
Well, change starts at home. I think it's a fantastic idea. And what's amazing about involving young people in it, young people are very ambitious. When they put their mind to something, they make it happen. And I think that's why it's really important that we get them involved. And if they can think on that level, I personally believe that there would be a fantastic change.
How young are the students?
Well, for the Discovery Club, where we're rolling out this program, they will be the 7 to 12-year-olds, so both explorers and guardians. And hopefully we can do some workshops with the ones that are 13 and up a little bit in the future.
That's great. What else about the program do we need to know? And the average viewer out there?
Oh, well, the conservation program or the My Science, My Conch. Yeah, I think just reiterating what Anessa had mentioned earlier, that this is really about everybody coming together to find a solution. I'm speaking from a scientist perspective, but there are many other stakeholders involved that have a stake in this issue, and it is something that if it's going to work, if there's going to be a sustainable solution, then we all need to think together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think in the past we've not done so well as a country to involve every key stakeholder in key issues. It affects us all, so everyone needs to be involved. Maybe because the scientists say it doesn't mean it's right, because we still have to make a living. And that's a valid point. People do need to make a living. And like Anessa made mention to earlier, we do need to take those things into consideration. And then there are the youth. If you look at the population demographics of the Bahamas, there's going to come a day when there will be a lot of people at that age where they're the ones going out and buying the conch and fishing the conch, because there are a lot more young people under the age of 30 than there are above. So we really need to make sure that they are effectively engaged on a level that's not, here, take this and play with it, it's just another activity, but this is your future I'm putting in your hands.
Now we know that Catherine's in Exuma, and we heard Anessa talk about some of the other islands, but you were raised spent a lot of time in Andros and Eleuthera, right?
Yes.
And what's the attitudes there?
Well, I believe, like Anessa said, a lot of people are understanding that there is an issue. Nobody wants fingers to be pointed at them and to say, well, someone else comes in and says, this is your island and we're going to tell you what to do here. I think everybody wants to be involved, both in Eleuthera and in Andros, which at the BNT we spend a lot of time on those two islands now as well. But I really believe if we include everyone in what it is that we're doing, and we not just take the research and the data, but we apply it and we use it, I feel like on those islands a difference is definitely going to be made as well.
Now, you have something to call the Conservation Campaign Coloring Competition, right? I think the inaugural one was last year, am I correct?
Yes, it was.
Good, and was that very successful?
It was, and that was another one of the campaigns that a lot of our Discovery Club students were involved in. Basically, there's a little coloring pamphlet with information about the conch and some activities that can be done. And what we did as a bit of encouragement to get the students involved with the activity was that we picked a prize winner, and they received their prize. They came to the BNT and they got little trinkets just of encouragement to say that you colored a picture of a conch, you did our activities, and it seems small to you, but you've probably learned something key to the development of the future of the Bahamas.
And if people wanted to find out more about the science of it, we know there's Google and all that, but is there a special website that they can find out what you're doing in Exuma?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, all of our reports from throughout the Bahamas can be found on www.communityconch.org, and you can go and find any of our publications there as well, scientific publications. So it's all out there. Yeah, if you feel so inclined.
So you just got to take action, really.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be having very little time left with you, but we don't have to say goodbye to you. But one word of advice to everyone out there before you go, Catherine.
Oh wow! Vote with your dollar. You know, just try to be a conscious consumer of this precious resource here. It's not something that a lot of other countries have lost, and so we know it's possible. And if you're taking something, just make sure that it's in a sustainable way.
Great. Well, thank you for all your efforts to help us sustain it, and thanks for the actual lessons in measuring conch.
Sure.
We're going to be back in our last segment on the Reid Factor talking about conservation right after this. We're trying to make sure that we've got conch here in the Bahamas to eat for years to come. Again, Anessa Lundy and Stephen Evans. And you all have a Facebook page. What kind of interaction have you been getting from people for the conservation effort there?
We've been getting a lot of traction recently. We've started posting a lot more of the science behind conservation. We haven't been doing that in the past because we thought people weren't interested. But as it turns out, people are really interested in how we're getting to the decisions that we should protect the conch fishery.
We were talking about the younger kids as well, right? Do you find out stories that they're going to their parents and saying, "Mommy, Daddy, we can't have this conch because it's too small"?
They do. We get a lot of comments on all of our Facebook pages for our different programs from parents about, well, my kid came home and said that this is going on and this is going on. But the reaction is actually surprising. They're pleased that their kids are taking responsibility rather than, why are you filling up my kid's head with nonsense? They're saying, I appreciate the fact that this is actually something that they remember at the end of the day.
And let's remind our viewers again what you're not supposed to be taking if it's too small. What are the dimensions again?
The lip of the conch has to be 15 millimeters, or should be 15 millimeters thick.
So less than 15 millimeters, don't look at it.
No, it has not reproduced yet. It's still a baby.
Wow. Now, you have a lot of other partners that are helping you to try and get the message out, right?
Yes.
You want to talk about some of them?
Yes, conservation is a huge partnership. It's an amazing partnership. We are partners with the Department of Marine Resources. It's a government agency. We have a lot of non-government agencies. We have the Bahamas Reef Environment Educational Foundation, Friends of the Environment, Community Conch, also non-government. We have the Nature Conservancy, ANCAT, Nature's Hope for Southern Andros, Exuma Foundation. An up-and-coming NGO is Cat Island United, Cape Eleuthera Institute, the Island School. It's just West End Overfishing, Camp Association.
I see Kalik.
Well, yes, Kalik. There's Bahamas Marine Exporters Association. So all of the marine exporters have come together to form an association. They've partnered with the campaign. They actually helped fund the Knowledge, Attitudes, and Practices survey. There's Sandals Bahamas. We have Corporate Bahamas on board. Wendy's, the More Bahamas Foundation. They are the underlying funder for the campaign.
So all of these agencies should be encouraging, and not just encouraging, but employing sustainable practices when it comes to having conch, eh?
Yes.
Or to eating conch. We should actually, maybe start the campaign right here, right now, to actually have a closed conch season, eh? What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea.
Let it
I second
coincide
that.
with the crawfish season. What other pieces of information do you want our viewers to know before we actually close this show?
We want people to be honest with us and open with us when we talk to you. We want people to, especially the fishermen, we want your opinion, and we want to know how we can help you continue to make a living on the water.
Another thing that I'd like to mention is that getting involved, there's always a possibility for that. BNT has a huge volunteer program. On New Providence alone, we see over 500 volunteers per year. The process is really easy. You come and you tell us what you're interested in, and if you're interested in working with the conservation campaign or with the Discovery Club students,
Working with it now, not eating it, right?
yeah, not eating it, not eating it, but working along with us in this fight. There's so much room for people to just say, "I want to help. What can I do?" You can call our office and we'll let you know.
Getting back to your coloring competition that you have with the kids, the dates, are they set dates? I know it was April 17th through May 22nd. Are those the same dates every year, pretty much?
Well, last year was our first one, and we're looking for sponsors to continue it. So if we are lucky to get another sponsorship, we'll continue it.
You mean there's a chance that it may not happen this year?
There's a chance. That's funding dependent.
Wouldn't that be sad?
What kind of prizes did you give out last year for the kids? Because there were weekly prizes, right?
Yes, Harborside Marina partnered with us. They're really great. They sponsored the grand prize. It was 2 fishing lines. Wendy's partnered with us on the coloring competition as well. It was a cute little knapsack, and inside were like coloring things and candies. I'm sure the parents weren't happy with that, but we had some candies and some little toys in there.
Yeah. Well, listen, before we close out, I want from each of you your final word of encouragement or advice to Bahamians and anyone coming to the Bahamas that might be looking at conch. Go ahead, please. We'll start with you.
Yeah, my final word would just be that we need to take responsibility for what's ours. Problems aren't going to fix themselves. And here we are in a unique position. We have the ability to solve this issue before it's unsolvable, before conch becomes so endangered or even extinct that it's of no value to us anymore.
Do the people you talk to really buy into the fact that, really, I mean, even though we're seeing it, but that really there could be no conch?
I think they get that one day if these trends continue. It's inevitable.
But they're not getting it enough now.
Not to be honest, no. People are feeling like there is a problem and the numbers are going down, but it's not really hitting home yet. It's going down, and it's going to go down to 0 if we don't do something. So that would be my take-home message.
That would be a bigger shame. Eh?
Yeah.
It would be devastating.
It's something that's never happened on such a level. I'm not sure if we understand how to cope with such a big issue.
So really what we have to do is look at the other countries that have already gone through it and
Many
learn
have,
from them.
Many have.
Like we export our conch to Florida and other countries because they don't have conch.
Wow.
Right neighbors, right nearby.
Wow. That's amazing. But listen, we're happy that you all are doing the work that you're doing, Bahamas National Trust and all of its many partners, Stephan Evans, Anessa Lundy, and of course, Catherine Booker. Thank you all for being on the Reid Factor. And let's each one of us do our best to make sure that, future generations have conch to eat. I'm Julian Reid. Thanks for joining us.